With that, we will leave the legal, strictly legal discussion for the moment and move on to Vasileios Karagiannopoulos, a reader in criminology at Portsmouth University, with his take on criminological aspects around this aim.
Thanks, Adina, and thank you all for persevering. I know, am I the last? I'm the last, I think, aren't I? So I wanted to, when we started discussing this topic with Adina and the workshop, I said it would be interesting to do something, but I don't really know what I could do. And then we came up with this concept that not many people have actually focused on the cybercrime related aspects that can be facilitated by using deceased people's data and accounts. And as I said in the previous session, and for those that weren't there, I run a cybercrime awareness clinic, and one of the main things I do is go out to the community and provide advice and guidance to vulnerable groups. And we focus on various different groups, such as young people, people with disabilities, older adults, businesses and charities, and so on. So I thought that would be an interesting aspect to explore, especially if it hasn't been explored that much in the past. And from what I've heard today, I haven't really seen much discussion. I don't know if it might be discussed in other forums, but I think it would be an interesting dimension to the discussion, hopefully. So I was reading Adina's and Lillian's chapter that talks about the Black Mirror episode, and how Martha, I think, sort of tries to gradually reincarnate her late husband Ash, and she initially has this email simulations and goes all the way up to creating a cyborg, let's say, or whatever, a physical kind of simulacrum that she interacts with and then gets bored. And they were very excited about the very positive end to that episode, which is unusual for the endings of Black Mirror episodes, as we all know. So I thought, okay, how can I think of more sinister kind of scenarios to maybe explore the different dimensions a bit more? So I was thinking, okay, what if people could hack this application that is sort of developing this cyborg, this simulacrum, this AI software that Martha is interacting with? What if people could use the information that is in social media in the public domain about Ash in order to create messages to friends and family of Ash in order to phish them and get money from them, or trick them into doing some other actions? And I went all the way to even imagining what it would be like for people to actually create such a simulacrum for Martha, and then get her to fall in love with that simulacrum, and then try to exploit Martha by actually blackmailing her that they will terminate her, husband if she doesn't pay money, or get her to engage in cyber sex with that simulacrum, and then record her and blackmail her about exploiting that video and publishing it on social media to work colleagues or family and friends and so on. So essentially what I've done is try to see how everyday scenarios of cybercrime could be transposed into an environment where the data that is being used is disease data, or applications that might be developed in the future, perhaps using deceased people's data. As I said, I do a lot of cyber awareness, and I engage a lot with government advice and guidance. And for those that weren't here in the previous session, one of the main problems that I would face if I were to go out and speak to people about this topic is the taboo nature of this topic. It's not very straightforward to go out to people that are in the older adult category that we interact with, for example, and speak to them about having considered the risks and the implications of what will happen to the data when they die. And at the same time, obviously, when we're working with young people, it won't be very relevant to them, perhaps, because they will see this as a very, very future kind of possibility that is not very immediate for them to consider anyway. They have a lot of other issues they're dealing with, like bullying, sexting, and so on. So why would they bother with this? Okay, I can't really follow the chat, but I will look after I finish. I'll try to be brief. So I looked in literature and tried to find news posts and other guidance. I didn't come across a lot of guidance in the traditional channels. I mean, one of the things that we have found is a big challenge with cyber awareness is the amount of information that people have access to in terms of cybercrime related advice, and the multiplicity of vectors, which is so confusing and so overwhelming that people just shut down and don't bother to do anything. So on the one hand, obviously, you have a lot of advice out there in relation to cybersecurity. On the other hand, no one really mentions that aspect of cybersecurity. We do talk about, social media passwords and privacy settings and so on. These are like very common things that we advise on, but no one's ever asked about this. No one's ever mentioned about this, and we haven't seen any reference in relevant media in relation to this. So in the literature I found, and I appreciate, I'm very new to this kind of cybersecurity area, so there might be more that I'm yet to explore. But from what I saw, deceased people's data have been used regularly in order to create bank accounts, in order to commit insurance fraud and other health-related fraud or social security fraud. People have also used dead people account, deceased people account to harass other people, either family members or friends, and they have used such accounts also to blackmail families. So, for example, there was this case in Japan where families, of course, in Japan, the family honor is a huge thing, as is in many cultures, but perhaps a bit more in Japan. And people were being communicated, were being contacted by cyber criminals with messages saying, your dead family relative had some information on the social media, and we've hacked the social media, and we will expose that information and expose the family and mar the family owner unless you pay some money. So really interesting dimension in terms of how the data can be used. A lot of you today have also mentioned that there is emotional value and there is financial value in the data. And I think, from a criminological perspective, I guess wherever there is wherever there is value, either emotional or financial, someone will try to exploit that to their benefit in order to gain money or reputation or whatever other benefits they want to get. And I think this is important to bear in mind. Also, from a criminological perspective, we do have a victim or multiple victims, I think, that might not be aware this is happening. The person is deceased, so obviously they can't do anything about it. And then the family of the deceased person is probably too busy dealing with other more important things or grieving the person to bother with their social media accounts or other internet-related accounts. So there is no one to really protect or figure out if there's been something wrong with the account. And obviously there is great opportunities in terms of actually compromising that data and using the data and even selling that data online as databases. Now, if we consider COVID and the implications of COVID in terms of additional deaths and how many accounts might be orphaned at the moment, and also if we consider that the social media generation is gradually getting older, so we are going to get thousands, if not millions, of accounts more that haven't been dealt with from a deceased person perspective, then identity theft is not a problem anymore for cyber criminals. They want to attack accounts from living persons. Now they wouldn't have to, because the amount of data that will be out there from deceased people accounts will be immense. So it will be much easier for people to use that data. So there are a lot of policy implications. The government is spending loads of money in cyber awareness campaigns and cyber security campaigns. And I think this aspect is not featuring in these campaigns. And it is perhaps something that should be added to the mix when we are considering the future implications of social media and cybersecurity and online accounts. There are harms, and we mentioned harms to the victims, obviously, and the theory behind this, and harms to family and friends. But I think there's also harm in general for the public interest because of the amount of crime that could be generated by the data out there. So, for example, for me, a question is, would the government have a stronger kind of argument in terms of forcing more regulation in relation to this based on the online harms kind of concept and everything? And could we say that this makes a better argument for governments to actually try to force companies to regulate this aspect or provide provisions for this aspect of data more?
Okay.
Thank you.
That's great. A fascinating perspective to add on into this mix. And thank you, Vasileios. That you've got quite a few comments in the chat, so you might want to check it out with some sources and ideas as well.